All right, so um, we've got this Paris guide that you sent over. It looks like you're doing some planning for a trip.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And this Paris Travel Mistakes, a first-timer's guide, is a pretty cool place to start, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to kind of dig into this with you and see what we can pull out that might be useful to you to make this an amazing trip.
Okay.
So, right off the bat, the first thing that jumped out at me was this idea of traveling during the off-season. And, you know, they're not just saying go in winter.
Right.
They're specifically recommending January.
Okay.
For like incredible hotel deals, or April for that kind of shoulder season sweetness where the weather's still good, but the crowds are down.
Yeah.
And they're talking about saving, you know, over $100 a day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, sold already.
That's amazing.
But I'm curious, like, do you think you kind of miss out on some of that Parisian magic?
That's a good question.
By going during those kind of quieter months?
Yeah. You know, while that summer energy in Paris is undeniable, there's a different kind of magic in the off season. And just imagine, like, cozying up in a cafe with a view of, like, the Tuileries garden dusted in snow, or maybe strolling through one of those Christmas markets, and the smell of roasted chestnuts is, like, filling the air.
Wow.
And then on top of that, way fewer crowds at those iconic sites, like the Louvre.
Yeah.
Sign me up for that.
Okay. Yeah. You're painting a pretty tempting picture.
Absolutely.
I'm starting to see the appeal.
Yeah.
And speaking of iconic sites and maybe some impulse buys, let's talk about the Champs-Élysées.
All right.
This guide gives a pretty stern warning about the prices there.
Yeah, they're not kidding. It's not just the fact that businesses on the Champs-Élysées have to pay such high rent. And obviously pass that on to the shoppers.
Right.
But there's this whole layer of luxury branding and perceived value at play. You know, you're paying a premium for the experience, for the ambiance.
Right.
You know, that association with high-end brands.
It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
You could buy the same perfume or handbag back home.
Yeah.
Probably for like a fraction of the cost.
Totally.
But there's something about the Champs-Élysées that makes you want to...
The allure of exclusivity, that feeling of being surrounded by luxury and sophistication.
Yeah.
But a savvy traveler knows to appreciate that, you know, for what it is an experience.
Yeah.
And maybe save those euros for something truly unique to Paris.
So speaking of unique experiences, this guide recommends catching the Eiffel Tower at sunset.
Oh, yeah.
From the Jardin du Trocadero.
Classic.
They say the hourly sparkle show at night is magical.
Yeah.
Have you seen it from that viewpoint?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's breathtaking. And I've got a pro tip.
Okay.
Instead of just showing up, check the sunset time beforehand, grab a blanket, and some goodies from a local market.
Yeah.
And have yourself a little Parisian picnic with that view.
It's genius.
Right.
Okay, you've convinced me.
Yeah.
Sunset picnic. It is.
Absolutely.
Now, this guide dives into some foodie territory with a warning about tourist trap restaurants. I'm guessing you have some thoughts on this.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Those places, they prey on convenience. You know, tourists are tired, hungry, and maybe a little overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Parisian food culture is all about savoring, not rushing.
Yeah.
And this guide recommends venturing just a little further afield to those arrondissements beyond the typical tourist zones.
Yeah.
Think of it like discovering these hidden neighborhoods, each with their own personality.
Right.
You could be enjoying a fantastic steak frites at a family-run bistro in the 11th, or a delicious croque monsieur and a glass of wine near the Sorbonne in the 5th. All for a much more reasonable price.
I'm already making a note to explore those neighborhoods.
Absolutely.
It's funny, though, you mentioned savoring, not rushing.
Right.
And that makes me think about another cultural difference this guide brings up.
Okay.
Tipping. They say it's not expected in Paris.
Yeah.
The way it is in some other places. Why is that?
Well, in France, service charges are actually included in the menu prices.
Interesting.
So waiters and servers are paid a living wage without relying on tips.
Okay.
It's a different system, and I think it reflects a different mindset about the dining experience as a whole.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
I always found it a little awkward trying to figure out, like, the right tip amount.
Yeah.
The guide suggests something small, like 5 to 10%.
Yeah.
As a gesture of appreciation for great service. But it's not an obligation.
Exactly. And I found that a simple merci beaucoup with a sincere smile goes a long way expressing your gratitude.
All right, so I'm definitely brushing up on my French.
Good idea.
And speaking of food, this guide has a playful little challenge.
Okay.
Are you brave enough to try escargot or frog's legs?
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever dared?
Of course. I always try to embrace the local specialties when I travel, even if they seem a bit out there at first. But for those who aren't quite ready to dive into snails or amphibians, the guide recommends looking beyond those dare-to-try dishes and embracing the incredible diversity of Parisian cuisine.
Yeah, they mentioned some classic dishes. Coq au vin.
Yeah, cassoulet. Yeah.
Duck confit. And suddenly I'm starving.
I know, me too.
But before we plan out our entire culinary itinerary, this guide makes a point about pacing yourself in Paris.
Right.
I'm all for a leisurely trip. But did any of their specific suggestions stand out to you?
This idea of flânerie, which is basically the art of Parisian strolling. It's about savoring the unexpected, not rushing from one landmark to the next. Imagine you're not checking off boxes on a to-do list. You're sipping coffee at a sidewalk cafe, watching the city wake up. You strike up a conversation with a local, maybe learn a new phrase in French. That's flânerie.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
It's about experiencing the city on a deeper level, connecting with its rhythm, its soul.
Exactly. And this guide gives some great examples of how to embrace that mindset. They suggest picking a few key areas to explore each day rather than trying to see everything at once. So instead of trying to conquer like the entire city in a weekend, we're talking about lingering in a charming bookstore in the Latin Quarter.
Absolutely.
Or stumbling upon a hidden courtyard cafe.
Exactly. Or picture yourself like wandering through the Marais, popping into vintage shops and art galleries, stopping for a delicious falafel or a pastry along the way.
Oh, yeah.
That's how you truly discover the hidden gems of Paris.
Speaking of hidden gems, I love that this guide encourages us to venture beyond the Eiffel Tower and the Louvre. They specifically mention Le Mur de Jetem.
Oh, yeah.
Which I have to admit I'd never heard of before. What's the story there?
It's this incredible wall covered in hundreds of I love yous.
Wow.
Written in different languages from all over the world.
Oh, wow.
It's tucked away in a little square in Montmartre, and it's just this burst of love and color and connection.
That sounds so charming and perfectly Instagrammable, might I add.
Oh, absolutely. What other under-the-radar spots does this guide recommend?
Well, they mentioned Rue Cremieux, which is this picture-perfect street with colorful houses and cobblestones, like something out of a fairy tale. And then there's Parc de Buttes-Chaumont, a sprawling park with waterfalls and grottos and incredible views of the city. It's the perfect escape from the hustle and bustle.
I'm officially adding those to my list.
Good idea.
I love the idea of discovering these little pockets of charm that most tourists miss.
That's the beauty of exploring a city like Paris. There's always something new to uncover. A secret courtyard, a hidden passageway, a tiny shop selling handcrafted treasures.
Oh, yeah.
It's about keeping your eyes open, your sense of adventure alive.
And speaking of adventure, this guide also reminds us to be aware of our surroundings and take precautions against pickpockets and scams, especially in crowded tourist areas.
Yeah, it's always smart to be vigilant no matter where you travel. They mention a common scam where someone tries to tie a bracelet on your wrist and then demand payment. The best advice, just politely decline and keep moving.
Trust your instincts.
Exactly.
Now, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, this idea of savoring the Parisian lifestyle. What are some ways this guide suggests we can truly immerse ourselves in that?
They recommend checking out the local markets. Not just for the delicious food, but for the chance to interact with vendors and get a taste of Parisian daily life.
Maybe try practicing your French. While you're browsing.
That's a great idea. I'm all for any excuse to practice my French.
Absolutely.
And speaking of food, this guide has some interesting insights on Parisian dining etiquette.
They say it's not customary to flag down your server the way we might do in other countries.
Yeah, it's considered a bit rude to try to get your server's attention by snapping your fingers or waving your arms.
Yeah.
The Parisian approach is much more subtle.
Okay.
You make eye contact, maybe give a slight nod, and your server will come to you when they're available.
It's all about that Parisian elegance, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And I love that this guide encourages us to embrace the slower pace of life in Paris.
Yeah.
They say it's okay to linger over a meal.
Right.
To savor each bite, to really enjoy the experience.
Exactly. Dining in Paris is about so much more than just fueling up.
Right.
It's about conversation, connection, and appreciating the art of food and wine.
It's making me rethink my whole approach to travel.
I know.
Instead of rushing through a checklist of attractions,
right.
It's about slowing down and soaking it all in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this guide gives some fantastic advice on how to do just that. They recommend planning your days around a few key experiences rather than trying to cram too much in.
So instead of rushing from the Louvre to the Eiffel Tower to Notre Dame all in one day, we're talking about maybe spending a morning exploring the Marais, followed by a leisurely lunch. And an afternoon browsing the shops along the Seine, right?
Exactly. It's about creating a rhythm for your trip that allows for those moments of serendipity, these unexpected encounters that truly make a journey memorable.
And speaking of memorable experiences, I'm curious about what this guide has to say about the art and culture scene in Paris.
Right.
We all know about the Louvre and the Musée d'Orsay.
Of course.
But are there any hidden gems?
Oh, there are a few.
They recommend.
They suggest checking out the Musée Carnavalet, which is dedicated to the history of Paris. It's housed in these beautiful historic mansions.
Wow.
And it's full of fascinating artifacts and stories.
Oh, I love a good history museum.
You too.
And I'm always on the lookout for unique architectural experiences.
Okay.
Are there any hidden architectural gems they recommend?
Well, they mention the covered passages, which are these beautiful glass-roofed arcades lined with shops and cafes. They were built in the 19th century, and they're like stepping back in time. Galerie Vivienne and Passage des Panoramas are two of the most famous ones.
I've seen pictures of those. They're absolutely stunning.
They are.
I can't believe I haven't added them to my list yet.
You have to.
And for something a little different, they suggest checking out the Saint-Jacques Tower.
Oh, yeah.
Which is all that remains of a 16th century church.
Right.
You can climb to the top for panoramic views of the city.
It's amazing.
Okay, I'm officially adding that to my must-see list.
Good.
I love the idea of discovering these hidden historical and architectural treasures tucked away in the city.
Yeah, and don't forget about the street art scene in Paris.
Oh, yeah.
This guide recommends exploring the Belleville neighborhood, which is known for its vibrant murals and graffiti art.
Ooh, that's a great idea. I love how street art can add a layer of energy and personality to a city.
Absolutely.
It's like a living, breathing art gallery.
Exactly. And it's constantly evolving, so there's always something new to discover.
Speaking of evolving,
I
want to touch on something this guide mentions that I found really interesting. The changing face of Parisian neighborhoods.
Right.
They talk about how areas like the Canal Saint-Martin have become trendy hotspots in recent years.
Right. It's fascinating to see how neighborhoods transform over time.
Yeah.
The Canal Saint-Martin area used to be a bit industrial and gritty.
Right.
But now it's full of cool cafes and art spaces.
It's like the city is constantly reinventing itself, which adds another layer of intrigue to exploring it.
Yeah, and it means there's something for everyone in Paris, whether you're looking for cutting-edge trends or old-world charm.
And this guy does a great job of highlighting both sides of that coin. They encourage us to embrace the classics, the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, the Champs-Élysées.
Of course.
But also to venture beyond those iconic sites and discover the hidden gems, the local favorites, the unexpected encounters that make a trip truly unique.
I couldn't agree more. It's that balance between the familiar and the unknown that makes Paris such a captivating destination.
Now, this guide has a whole section on practical tips for navigating Paris from transportation to packing to safety. Is there anything in that section that particularly resonated with you?
They make a great point about the importance of learning at least a few basic French phrases. Even if you're not fluent, a simple bonjour, merci, and s'il vous plaît can go a long way in showing respect.
Absolutely.
And making your interactions with locals more pleasant.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah.
I always try to learn a few key phrases before traveling to a new country. It's amazing how much a little effort can enhance your experience.
Absolutely. And they have some practical tips for navigating the Paris metro, which can be a bit overwhelming at first glance.
Yeah.
They recommend downloading a Metro Map app.
Okay.
And purchasing a Navigo pass if you plan on using public transportation frequently.
Those are both great suggestions.
Yeah.
And they also remind us to be mindful of rush hour crowds.
Yeah.
Especially if we're trying to get to the airport.
Right. It's always a good idea to allow extra time for travel, especially during peak hours.
Right.
And they offer a clever tip for avoiding the long taxi lines at the airport. Pre-book a ride with a reputable car service.
That's a game changer.
All right.
I'm all about minimizing travel stress whenever possible. Now, this guide also has some interesting insights on Parisian fashion and style.
Oh, yeah.
They say it's all about effortless chic and understated elegance.
Right. It's not about flashy logos or over-the-top outfits.
Right.
Parisians tend to favor classic pieces in neutral colors with a focus on quality and fit.
It's that je ne sais quoi that we all try to emulate, right?
Exactly.
And this guide gives some great tips on how to pack for a Parisian adventure.
Oh, okay.
Emphasizing versatile pieces that can be mixed and matched.
They recommend packing comfortable shoes, as you'll likely be doing a lot of walking.
Right.
And they suggest layering your clothing.
Okay.
As the weather in Paris can be unpredictable.
Great advice. Comfort and practicality are key.
Absolutely.
Especially when you're exploring a new city. Now, before we wrap up this fascinating deep dive, I want to touch on something that this guide highlights as a truly essential part of the Parisian experience.
Like cafe culture.
Ah, yes. Cafe culture is the heartbeat of Paris. It's about slowing down, observing the world around you, and savoring those little moments of connection.
They talk about how cafes are more than just places to grab a coffee or a bite to eat. They're social hubs, meeting places, spaces for contemplation and creativity.
Oh, exactly. You might see someone writing in a journal, sketching in a notebook, or simply people watching over a cup of coffee. It's about embracing that slower pace of life, that appreciation for the simple pleasures.
It sounds so like the perfect antidote to our always-on, fast-paced world.
Totally.
This guide even suggests finding a cafe you love and making it your spot.
Nice.
A little home away from home in Paris.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
It's about finding a place where you feel comfortable and inspired,
right?
Where you can watch the world go by and soak out the Parisian atmosphere.
And maybe practice your French with the barista.
Exactly. Every interaction is an opportunity to connect with the local culture, even if it's just ordering a croissant or asking for directions.
Speaking of croissants, this guide has some fascinating insights into the Parisian approach to bread.
Oh, yeah.
They say it's not just a food, it's a cultural symbol, almost a way of life.
Absolutely. The French have a deep reverence for bread. They take pride in the quality of their ingredients, the traditional baking methods, that crusty exterior and the soft, chewy interior.
It's making me crave a fresh baguette right now.
I know, right?
This guide even recommends visiting a boulangerie, a traditional bakery, as a cultural experience in itself.
I couldn't agree more. That aroma of a freshly baked bread wafting out onto the street is intoxicating. And watching the bakers work their magic is a true art form.
Okay, I'm officially adding boulangerie hopping to my Paris itinerary.
Yeah.
Now, before we wrap up this deep dive,
I
want to circle back to something we touched on earlier. Those hidden gems. Those unexpected discoveries that make a trip truly special.
I think that's a perfect way to end our conversation.
Yeah.
The beauty of Paris lies not just in its iconic landmarks, but in those little moments of serendipity, those chance encounters, those hidden corners that reveal the true soul of the city.
So, dear listener, as you finalize your Paris plans, I encourage you to embrace that spirit of discovery, a venture beyond the well-trodden path.
Yeah.
Follow your curiosity and allow yourself to be surprised and delighted by the magic that awaits you in the City of Lights.
And remember, this deep dive is just the beginning of your Parisian adventure. The real journey unfolds when you step onto those cobblestone streets and allow yourself to get lost in the beauty and wonder of this incredible city.
Beautifully said. Bon voyage, dear listener.
Bon voyage!
And may your Parisian adventure be filled with unforgettable moments.